My name is Yvonne, and at 61 years old, I thought I had seen everything life could throw at me. I raised my son alone after my husband died, worked hard to give him a good life, and helped him buy his first home. But there was one dinner that changed everything. One dinner where I discovered my own son had tried to poison my drink to humiliate me in front of our family. What he didn't know was that I switched glasses with his wife. Before I tell you what happened next, I'd love to know where you're watching from. Drop a comment below and let me know your city or country. And if you've ever dealt with family betrayal, hit that like button and subscribe because this story is about to take a turn you won't see coming. Now, let me start from the beginning. I live in Phoenix, Arizona, and for the past 33 years, it's just been me and my boy. Well, until he got married anyway. My husband Harold died when our son Brandon was only 12 years old. Car accident on the Interstate 10. One moment I had a partner, the next, I was a widow with a child to raise alone. Those years were hard, I won't lie. I worked as an estate planner, helping wealthy families organize their assets and prepare for the future. The irony wasn't lost on me that I was planning other people's legacies while trying to build one for my own son. But I did well for myself. I was smart with money invested carefully. And by the time Brandon graduated high school, I had built a comfortable nest egg. I paid for his college education at Arizona State University without him having to take out a single student loan. He studied marketing and graduated with decent grades. Nothing spectacular, but he was my son, and I was proud of him. Brandon got a job at a marketing firm in Scottsdale after graduation. The pay was okay, nothing extraordinary, but enough for a single guy to live on. Then 5 years ago, when he was 32, he married Stephanie. She was a receptionist at a dental office. Nice enough girl, I thought at the time. Polite, always smiled when she saw me. I welcomed her into our small family with open arms. 3 years ago, they came to me with a request. They wanted to buy a house, a beautiful place in Scottsdale with 4 bedrooms, a pool, and a view of the mountains. The price tag was $350,000. Brandon's income alone wasn't enough to qualify for the mortgage. The bank needed a co-signer, someone with better credit and more stable finances. He asked me. I remember that conversation clearly. We sat in my living room, Brandon and Stephanie on one couch, me across from them in my favorite chair. Brandon laid out all the numbers, showed me the listing, talked about how this was their dream home. Stephanie held his hand and nodded along, her eyes bright with hope. They promised they could make the payments. They just needed me to sign on the dotted line. I said yes. Of course I said yes. He was my son, my only child. What else was I going to do? I became the co-signer on a $350,000 mortgage. But that wasn't all. I also gave them $50,000 as a gift for the down payment. I didn't want them to struggle with a tiny down payment and higher monthly costs. I wanted to help them start their lives right. They were so grateful. Brandon hugged me tight and called me the best mom in the world. Stephanie cried happy tears and thanked me over and over. We all went out to dinner to celebrate, and I paid for that too. I felt good about it. I felt like I was doing what a mother should do, helping her child build a future. For the first 2 years, everything seemed fine. Brandon and Stephanie moved into their house. They decorated it beautifully. I'd visit occasionally and they'd show me the new furniture they bought or the upgrades they made to the backyard. Brandon called me every couple of weeks, usually just to chat about work or to tell me about some new restaurant they tried. Life felt normal, good even. But about 6 months ago, I started noticing changes. Small things at first. Brandon began asking questions about my finances. Not in a casual way, but pointed questions. He wanted to know about my investment accounts, my retirement funds, my life insurance policy. He asked if I had a will, and if so, what was in it. When I told him I hadn't updated my will in years, he seemed almost agitated. He said I should do it soon, that it was important to have everything in order. I found it odd, but I told myself he was just being responsible. Maybe working in marketing had made him more aware of planning and organization. Maybe he was worried about me getting older. I was 61 after all. Not ancient, but not young either. Then Stephanie started chiming in too. During visits, she'd make little comments about inheritance and legacy. She'd say things like, "It must be nice to have built up so much over the years." Or "Brandon is so lucky to have such a successful mother." The words were compliments on the surface, but something about the tone felt off, like she was sizing up what I had, calculating its value. Brandon pushed harder for me to update my will. He even offered to help me find an estate attorney, which was ridiculous since I worked in estate planning myself. I knew dozens of attorneys. When I pointed this out, he got defensive. He said he was just trying to help, that he wanted to make sure I was taken care of. But I couldn't shake the feeling that he was really trying to make sure he was taken care of. One evening, about 3 weeks before the dinner, Brandon stopped by my house unannounced. He sat me down and had what he called a serious conversation. He said that life was unpredictable, that I should think about what would happen to my assets if something happened to me. He said it would be terrible if everything went to the state or got tied up in probate. I told him I was only 61 and in perfect health. I had no plans to die anytime soon. He gave me this look, this frustrated, almost angry look. He said, "But Mom, you never know what can happen." The way he said it sent a chill down my spine. It wasn't concern. It was something else. Something that made me feel like prey, being circled by a predator. I started to pull back a little after that. I didn't return his calls as quickly. I made excuses when he invited me over. I needed space to think, to figure out what was happening to my relationship with my son. Had I spoiled him too much, given him too much, made him feel entitled to everything I had worked for? Then came the invitation. Brandon called me on a Tuesday evening, his voice suddenly cheerful and warm. He said he and Stephanie wanted to host a family dinner at their place that coming Saturday. Nothing fancy, just a casual get-together with a few people. He listed the guests. Stephanie's brother Kyle and his wife Tara would be there. So would Brandon's good friend Garrett. And, of course, me. I hesitated. Part of me wanted to say no to keep my distance. But another part of me, the part that was still his mother, wanted to believe things could go back to normal. Maybe I was reading too much into his behavior. Maybe he really did just care about me having a proper will. Maybe I was being paranoid. So I said yes. I told him I'd be there at 6 o'clock. He sounded pleased, almost excited. He said Stephanie was planning a special Italian menu and that it would be a lovely evening. I told him I'd bring wine, and he said that would be perfect. But over the next few days, strange things happened. Brandon called again on Thursday. He asked about my health in a way that felt more like an interrogation than concern. Did I have any stomach problems? Was I taking any medications? Did I have allergies to any foods or ingredients? I told him I was healthy as a horse, no medications except a daily multivitamin, no allergies. Why was he asking? He laughed it off, said he just wanted to make sure Stephanie's menu wouldn't cause any issues. He wanted everything to be perfect. I accepted the explanation, but it nagged at me. Why would my son need to know about stomach problems for a dinner party Friday afternoon? Stephanie called me. That was unusual. She and I were friendly, but we didn't typically have phone conversations without Brandon present. She asked what I liked to drink. I told her I enjoyed white wine or sparkling water. She said in this overly enthusiastic voice, "Perfect. I'll make sure we have something special for you." The enthusiasm felt forced, theatrical, like she was reading from a script. I hung up the phone and sat in my kitchen staring at the wall. Something was wrong. I could feel it in my bones, but I couldn't put my finger on what it was. All I knew was that my instincts, the same instincts that had guided me through 33 years of single motherhood and a successful career, were screaming at me to be careful. Saturday arrived. I spent the morning trying to talk myself out of my suspicions. I was being silly. Brandon was my son. He loved me. Whatever weird behavior I'd noticed was probably just stress from work or marriage or finances. People went through phases. This would pass. I put on a nice blouse and slacks, grabbed the expensive bottle of Chardonnay I'd purchased, and drove to their house in Scottsdale. It was a beautiful evening, the Arizona sun just starting to dip toward the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. I pulled up to their house at exactly 6 o'clock. The front door was unlocked, and I walked in to find the dining room already set up beautifully. Candles flickered on the table. Soft music played from speakers somewhere. Kyle and Tara were already there sitting on the couch in the living room. Garrett arrived right behind me. We all exchanged greetings and hugs. Brandon came out from the kitchen and wrapped me in an embrace. But even as he hugged me, I noticed the stiffness in his shoulders, the way his smile didn't quite reach his eyes. Stephanie emerged next wearing an apron and carrying a wooden spoon. She gave me a smile that seemed plastered on artificial. We all moved to the dining room and took our seats. I was placed at the head of the table, a position of honor that should have made me feel special, but instead made me feel exposed. Brandon sat directly across from me. Stephanie was to my right. Kyle, Tara, and Garrett filled in the other seats. The conversation started pleasantly enough. Kyle talked about his work as an accountant. Tara mentioned their upcoming trip to San Diego. Garrett shared stories about a new project at his job. I smiled and nodded and contributed when appropriate, but my attention kept drifting to Brandon and Stephanie. They kept glancing at each other, these quick little looks that seemed to carry meaning. Stephanie served the first course, a caprese salad with fresh mozzarella and tomatoes. It was delicious, and I told her so. She thanked me but seemed distracted, almost nervous. Brandon kept checking his watch as if waiting for something. After we finished the salad, Stephanie brought out the main course, homemade fettuccine alfredo with grilled chicken and steamed broccoli on the side. A basket of warm garlic bread completed the spread. Everyone dug in complimenting Stephanie on her cooking. The food was genuinely good. I tried to relax and enjoy it. We ate and talked for about 20 minutes. Then Stephanie stood up abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor. "I made special drinks for everyone," she announced, her voice a bit too loud, a bit too bright. "It's a lavender lemon spritzer. Very refreshing." She disappeared into the kitchen and returned carrying a tray with 6 tall glasses. Each one was filled with a pale purple liquid, ice cubes floating at the top. She went around the table, setting a glass in front of each person. When she got to me, she paused. She picked up one specific glass from the tray, the last one, and placed it directly in front of me with both hands. "This one is especially for you, Mom," she said, and I noticed she called me Mom, something she rarely did. "I made it with your favorite sparkling water." I looked down at the glass. The color seemed slightly different from the others, darker, more opaque. The liquid at the bottom looked cloudy, while everyone else's drinks appeared clear all the way through. I glanced around the table. No one else seemed to notice the difference. "Is mine different?" I asked, trying to keep my voice light and curious rather than suspicious. Stephanie's eyes widened for just a fraction of a second. "Oh, I just added a bit more lavender syrup to yours. You'll love it, I promise." Brandon was watching me intently. He raised his glass. "To family," he said, and everyone else lifted their drinks too. I lifted mine, feeling the weight of it in my hand. The glass was cold, condensation already forming on the outside. Everyone took a sip. I brought the glass to my lips and let a tiny amount of liquid enter my mouth. The taste hit me immediately. Bitter, chemical, wrong. I didn't swallow. Instead, I pretended to take a drink, and then, as I lowered the glass, I let the liquid dribble into my napkin, holding it close to my mouth as if wiping my lips. The bitterness coated my tongue. This wasn't lavender and lemon. There was something else in there, something that didn't belong. My heart started to pound. My hands wanted to shake, but I forced them to stay steady. I set the glass down carefully and looked up. Brandon was staring at me, waiting, watching for a reaction. Stephanie had returned to her seat and was also watching me, though she tried to hide it by cutting her chicken into small pieces. Neither of them was drinking their own beverages. I noticed that now. Everyone else had taken several sips, but Brandon and Stephanie's glasses remained full. The realization crashed over me like a wave. They had drugged my drink. My own son and his wife had put something in my beverage. But why? What did they hope to accomplish? Then I remembered all the questions, the ones about my stomach, about medications, about allergies. They wanted to know if I would have an adverse reaction to whatever they'd slipped into my glass. They were planning something that would happen here in front of witnesses, in front of Kyle and Tara and Garrett. My mind raced. What would happen if I drank it? Would I get sick? Would I collapse? Or would it be something else, something designed to humiliate rather than harm? I thought about the bitter taste, the chemical quality. And then it hit me. Laxatives. They'd put laxatives in my drink, strong ones from the taste of it. They wanted me to have an accident. Here, at dinner, in front of everyone. The cruelty of it took my breath away. They wanted to make me look weak, sick, incompetent. Probably so they could argue I wasn't capable of managing my own affairs anymore. So they could push me to hand over control of my assets. Maybe even argue for power of attorney. Rage burned through me, but I kept my face calm. I wouldn't give them the satisfaction of knowing I'd figured it out. Instead, I would turn their plan against them. Stephanie stood up again. I forgot the bread is getting cold. Let me grab more from the kitchen. She hurried away, and in that moment, with everyone's attention diverted, I acted. Quick as lightning, I switched my glass with Stephanie's. She had set hers down right next to mine when she went to get the bread. The glasses were identical. No one would notice unless they were looking directly at me, and they weren't. Brandon was laughing at something Garrett had said. Kyle and Tara were looking at their phones, checking something together. I moved Stephanie's clean glass to my position and placed my tainted glass where hers had been. Then I sat back, picked up my fork and took a bite of pasta, as if nothing had happened. Stephanie returned with a fresh basket of bread. She sat down, picked up what she thought was her glass, and took a long drink. I watched her throat move as she swallowed. Once, twice, 3 times. She set the glass down half empty now. Brandon looked at me expectantly. I smiled at him. This is delicious, Stephanie. You're such a talented cook. I made sure not to touch my drink again, the clean one that had been hers. We continued eating. I kept up pleasant conversation, asking Tara about her job, complimenting Garrett on his new haircut, anything to seem normal. But inside I was counting the minutes, waiting to see how long it would take for the drugs to kick in. 15 minutes passed. Stephanie shifted in her seat. She put a hand on her stomach briefly, then pulled it away. A few more minutes went by. She shifted again, more noticeably this time. Her face had gone pale. Are you okay? Kyle asked her, noticing his sister's discomfort. I'm fine, Stephanie said, but her voice was strained. Just a little warm in here. Brandon frowned at her. Do you want me to turn up the air conditioning? No, Stephanie stood up suddenly, nearly knocking over her chair. Excuse me, I need to use the restroom. She walked quickly out of the dining room, one hand pressed against her abdomen. Brandon watched her go, confusion evident on his face. This wasn't part of their plan. I could see it in his expression. He expected me to be the one rushing to the bathroom, not his wife. We waited in awkward silence. Tara made small talk about the weather. Garrett complimented the house. But we could all feel the tension. Something was wrong, and everyone knew it. 5 minutes passed. Then we heard a sound from the hallway, a cry sharp and panicked. Brandon jumped up from his chair and ran toward the sound. The rest of us followed, concern, overriding politeness. We found Stephanie in the hallway between the bathroom and the bedroom. She was crying, trembling, her face red with shame and shock. The laxatives had worked, fast and strong, just as they were designed to. But they had worked on the wrong person. She had not made it to the bathroom in time. The evidence of that was painfully, humiliatingly obvious. She stood there, shaking, tears streaming down her face, unable to meet anyone's eyes. Oh my God, Kyle breathed, turning away immediately to give his sister privacy. Tara covered her mouth with her hand. Garrett looked at the floor, his face flushed with second-hand embarrassment. Brandon rushed to Stephanie's side. What happened? Are you sick? Stephanie could barely speak through her sobs. I don't know what's wrong with me. Brandon guided her toward the bedroom, his arm around her shoulders. Before they disappeared inside, he called back to us. I'm so sorry, everyone. I think she has food poisoning or something. Maybe you should all head home. Kyle and Tara didn't need to be told twice. They grabbed their things and hurried toward the door, mumbling apologies and well wishes. Garrett followed right behind them. I could hear their car engine starting outside within minutes. I stayed. I walked slowly toward the bedroom where Brandon had taken Stephanie. The door was partially open. I could hear Stephanie crying, Brandon trying to comfort her. I knocked softly. Brandon appeared in the doorway, his face etched with stress and confusion. Mom, you should go too. This is so embarrassing. I don't know what happened to her. I do? I said quietly. His expression changed. Wariness crept into his eyes. What do you mean? We need to talk, Brandon, now. He glanced back at Stephanie, who was in the bathroom now, the shower running. Then he stepped into the hallway and closed the bedroom door behind him. What are you talking about? He asked, but his voice lacked conviction. He already knew. I could see it in his face. I pulled out my phone and showed him a photo I'd taken earlier before switching the glasses. A photo of my drink showing the cloudy sediment at the bottom that wasn't in anyone else's glass. This was supposed to be my drink, wasn't it? His face went white. You put something in it. I continued, my voice steady, despite the fury burning in my chest. Laxatives, I'm guessing. Strong ones. You wanted to humiliate me in front of everyone. Make me look sick, weak, incompetent. And then what, Brandon? What was the next step in your plan? He opened his mouth, closed. It opened it again. Don't lie to me, I snapped. I switched glasses with Stephanie. Whatever you put in my drink, she drank instead. That's why she's in there right now dealing with the consequences of your cruelty. Brandon leaned against the wall, all the color draining from his face. It was just... You just what? Thought you'd drug your own mother, thought you'd make me soil myself in front of family and friends. For what money? My assets. Were you planning to use this to declare me incompetent, to push for power of attorney? He didn't answer, but he didn't need to. The truth was written all over his guilty face. How long have you been planning this? I asked. The questions about my health, my medications, my stomach problems. You were making sure I wouldn't have some dangerous reaction. You didn't want to actually harm me. You just wanted to destroy my dignity. Mom, please. His voice cracked. Why, Brandon? I felt tears burning in my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. I gave you everything. I raised you alone after your father died. I worked myself to exhaustion to give you a good life. I paid for your college. I co-signed your mortgage. I gave you $50,000 for your house. And this is how you repay me. He slid down the wall until he was sitting on the floor, his head in his hands. We're drowning, Mom. The mortgage payments, the property taxes, the upkeep on this house. Stephanie's job doesn't pay much, and my salary barely covers everything. We have credit card debt. We're behind on payments. We thought if you saw how vulnerable you could be, how quickly things can go wrong, you'd want to help us. You'd want to make sure we were secure. Maybe update your will or give us access to some funds now instead of making us wait until I die. I finished for him. You were so focused on what you'd inherit that you decided to speed up the process, to manipulate me into handing over my money while I'm still alive. From the bedroom, we could hear Stephanie still crying. It was supposed to be harmless, Brandon whispered. Just embarrassing. We thought you'd be so shaken up that you'd realize you needed our help, that you'd want to get your affairs in order and make sure we were taken care of. I looked at my son, this man I'd raised, and I didn't recognize him. Get up, I said coldly. He stood slowly still, not meeting my eyes. I'm leaving, I told him. Don't call me. Don't come to my house. I need time to think about this. about what you've done, about what kind of person you've become. Mom, please, I'm sorry. We made a mistake. A terrible mistake. I walked toward the front door, grabbing my purse from where I'd left it. Brandon followed me, pleading, "Please don't go like this. Let's talk about it. We can fix this." I turned at the door, my hand on the knob. "You tried to drug me, Brandon. You tried to humiliate me in the worst way possible. There's no fixing that. There's no coming back from that level of betrayal." I walked out, closing the door behind me. I heard him calling my name, but I didn't stop. I got in my car, started the engine, and drove away from that house, away from my son, away from the wreckage of our relationship. I didn't cry until I got home. Then, sitting alone in my living room with all the lights off, I let the tears come. Great heaving sobs that shook my whole body. My son had tried to poison me. My own child. The baby I'd held in my arms. The boy I'd sacrificed everything for, had drugged my drink with the intention of destroying my dignity. The phone started ringing an hour later. Brandon's name lit up the screen. I didn't answer. He called again and again. I turned the phone off. The next morning, I found 17 missed calls from Brandon and 8 text messages. I read them all. They were variations of the same theme: apologies, explanations, justifications. He was sorry. They were desperate. They made a terrible choice. Please forgive them. Please call back. Please, Mom, please. Stephanie sent messages too. Long rambling paragraphs about how she didn't know Brandon was going to do it. How she tried to talk him out of it. How she felt terrible about what happened. I didn't believe a word of it. I remembered her voice on the phone, overly enthusiastic about my drink preferences. I remembered how she'd specifically handed me that glass. She knew she was part of it. I spent Sunday in a fog. I couldn't eat. I couldn't focus on the television or the book I tried to read. I just sat and replayed everything in my mind. Every moment of Brandon's childhood. Every sacrifice I'd made. Every time I'd put his needs before my own. And this was how it ended, with him trying to drug me for money. Monday morning, I made a decision. I wasn't going to let this go unpunished. I wasn't going to pretend it didn't happen or sweep it under the rug for the sake of family peace. Brandon needed to learn that actions have consequences. That you can't betray someone who loves you and expect to walk away unscathed. I called my attorney, Patricia. We'd worked together for years and I trusted her completely. I asked her to meet me at my office that afternoon. When she arrived, I explained everything. The dinner, the drugged drink, the switch, Stephanie's humiliation, Brandon's confession. Patricia listened without interrupting, her expression growing more serious with each detail. When I finished, she leaned back in her chair and shook her head. "Yvonne, this is serious. What they did could be considered assault." "I know," I said, "but I'm not interested in pressing criminal charges. That would destroy Brandon's life completely. And despite everything, I don't want that. But I do want him to face consequences. I want him to understand that he can't use people, can't manipulate the people who love him without paying a price." "What are you thinking?" Patricia asked. "The mortgage," I said. "I'm the co-signer. Can I remove myself from that obligation?" Patricia pulled out her tablet and started taking notes. "It's complicated, but potentially yes. If you can demonstrate that the primary borrower has acted in bad faith, has endangered you, or has violated the terms of your agreement, you may have grounds to petition the lender to release you from the co-signer obligation. Do you have any evidence of what happened at the dinner?" I thought about the photo I'd taken of the glass. "I have a picture of the drink before I switched it. You can see the sediment at the bottom. And I paused, remembering something. I saved some of the liquid. After the chaos with Stephanie, when Brandon took her to the bedroom, I went back to the dining room. I poured a small amount from the glass into a container I had in my purse. I don't know why I did it. Instinct, I guess. Patricia's eyes widened. "You still have it?" "It's in my refrigerator at home." "Yvonne, we need to get that tested immediately. If it contains laxatives or any other drug, and you can prove that drink was meant for you, we have a strong case." Not just for removing you from the mortgage, but for demonstrating that Brandon engaged in harmful behavior toward you. We drove to my house together. I retrieved the small container, barely 2 ounces of the purple liquid, from the back of my refrigerator. Patricia knew a lab that could run an analysis quickly and discreetly. We dropped it off that afternoon. The results came back 48 hours later. The liquid contained a high concentration of bisacodyl, a powerful stimulant laxative. The amount in just that 2 ounce sample was enough to cause severe gastrointestinal distress. If I had consumed the entire glass, which contained probably 10 ounces, the results would have been catastrophic and humiliating. Patricia prepared a legal packet. It included the lab results, my written statement about the events of the dinner, the photograph of the tainted drink, and copies of the text messages from Brandon and Stephanie that essentially admitted guilt. She submitted it all to the mortgage lender with a formal request to release me from the co-signer agreement on the grounds that the primary borrower had attempted to cause me harm. The bank's legal department reviewed the case. It took 3 weeks. 3 weeks during which Brandon called me every single day, sometimes multiple times. I never answered. Stephanie sent increasingly frantic messages. I blocked her number. Finally, the bank sent their decision. They agreed to release me from the co-signer obligation, effective immediately. However, there was a catch. Without me as co-signer, Brandon no longer qualified for the mortgage on his current income. The bank gave him 2 options. He could find a new co-signer within 30 days and go through the refinancing process. Or he could pay off the remaining balance of the loan in full. The remaining balance was just over $300,000. There was no way Brandon had that kind of money, and there was no way he'd find someone else willing to co-sign for such a large amount, especially given his debt-to-income ratio, which left only one real option. He would have to sell the house. The call came on a Thursday evening. I was watering my plants on the back patio when my phone rang. I'd started answering calls again, screening them first. This one was from Brandon. I let it ring 3 times before I picked up. "Hello, Brandon." My voice was cool, detached. "Mom." He sounded wrecked, desperate. "Mom, please, the bank is calling our loan. They say you removed yourself as co-signer. They're giving us 30 days to refinance or pay it off, or they'll start foreclosure proceedings. We don't have." "Mom, we're going to lose the house." "Yes," I said simply. "You are." "You can't do this. It's not fair." "Fair." The word came out sharp as a knife. "You want to talk to me about fair? You drugged me, Brandon. You and your wife put laxatives in my drink with the intention of humiliating me in front of our family and friends. You wanted to make me look weak and incompetent, so you could manipulate me into giving you money. And you think what I'm doing isn't fair." It was a mistake. We were desperate. We didn't know what else to do. You could have asked me for help like a normal person. You could have sat down with me and explained your financial situation. You could have shown me respect instead of treating me like a mark to be conned. We didn't think you'd help. You've been pulling away from us for months. You barely return our calls. We thought you'd say no if we asked directly. So you decided to drug me instead. Do you hear yourself, Brandon? Do you understand how insane that sounds? There was silence on the other end. Then I heard sniffling. He was crying. "Please, Mom, please don't do this. We have nowhere to go. Our credit is ruined. We can't afford to rent anywhere decent. Please." Where was your compassion when you were planning to make me soil myself at a dinner table? Where was your concern for my well-being when you were asking about my health issues to make sure your drug wouldn't kill me? "I'm sorry, I'm so sorry. I'll spend the rest of my life making it up to you." "No, Brandon, you won't, because I'm done. I'm done being your safety net. I'm done being the solution to all your problems. You're 37 years old. It's time you learn to stand on your own feet. Mom, please." I hung up. My hands were shaking, but not from guilt, from relief, from the strange, powerful sensation of finally standing up for myself after years of giving and giving and giving. An hour later, Stephanie called. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity got the better of me. Yvonne, please. She started, her voice thick with tears. Please don't do this to us. We made a terrible mistake, a horrible, unforgivable mistake. But please, we're begging you. Don't take away our home. Tell me something, Stephanie, I said. Did you know what Brandon was planning? Silence. Answer me. Did you know he was going to put laxatives in my drink? More silence. Then quietly, yes. And you went along with it. We were desperate. We're drowning in debt. The house payment, the credit cards, everything. We thought if you saw how vulnerable you were, you'd want to help us. You'd want to make sure your only son was taken care of. By trying to make me defecate on myself in public. She gasped at my bluntness. It sounds so awful when you say it like that. That's because it is awful, Stephanie. It's cruel and manipulative and disgusting. And you both participated in it willingly. I didn't want to. Brandon convinced me it was the only way. He said you'd never help us otherwise. You don't get to blame this all on Brandon. You made a choice. You chose to drug me. You specifically made that drink. You handed it to me with a smile on your face. You called me mom while you were poisoning me. That was your choice. I'm sorry, she sobbed. I'm so sorry. You should be. And now you get to live with the consequences of your choices. Just like I've had to live with the consequences of mine. I chose to raise Brandon alone. I chose to sacrifice for him. I chose to help you buy that house. All my choices. Now, you and Brandon get to live with yours. We'll lose everything, she whispered. No, you'll lose the house. You'll still have each other. You'll still have your jobs. You'll still have your health and your youth and opportunities to rebuild. I was 61 years old when you tried to destroy my dignity. I don't have the luxury of decades to recover from that kind of betrayal. So forgive me if I don't feel particularly sympathetic to your situation. I hung up before she could respond. Then I blocked her number too. The next few weeks unfolded exactly as Patricia had predicted. Brandon couldn't find a co-signer. No one in their right mind would take on that kind of liability for someone with his financial profile. He couldn't refinance on his own income, and he certainly couldn't pay off $300,000 in cash. He tried everything. He called distant relatives asking for help. He posted on social media about his situation, painting himself as the victim of a cruel mother who had abandoned him in his time of need. Some people believed him, but most saw through it, especially when details about what he'd actually done started circulating through the family grapevine. Finally, with foreclosure looming, Brandon put the house on the market. He had to sell quickly, which meant accepting a lower price than the house was worth. In the end, it sold for $320,000. After paying off the remaining mortgage balance and the realtor's commission and closing costs, Brandon and Stephanie walked away with about $8,000. $8,000 from a house I'd helped them buy with $50,000 of my own money. They moved into a small 2-bedroom apartment in a less desirable part of Phoenix. Brandon's final call to me came a week after they'd moved. His voice was flat, defeated. I hope you're happy, he said. You've destroyed us. No, Brandon, I replied calmly. You destroyed yourself. You made choices. Terrible, cruel choices. I simply refuse to let you destroy me in the process. I'm your son. Yes, you are. And that's what makes this so heartbreaking. But being my son doesn't give you the right to abuse me. It doesn't give you the right to drug me or manipulate me or treat me like an ATM machine. I loved you enough to sacrifice everything for you. I loved you enough to give you every opportunity. But I also love myself enough to walk away when you tried to turn that love into a weapon. I'll never forgive you for this, he said. That's your choice to make. Just like it was your choice to put laxatives in my drink. We all have to live with our choices, Brandon. I can live with mine. I hung up for the last time. 6 months have passed since that dinner. 6 months since I discovered my son's betrayal and decided to stop being his victim. People ask me sometimes if I regret what I did, if I wish I'd handled it differently, if I miss Brandon. The answer is complicated. Do I regret protecting myself and my assets from someone who tried to harm me? No. Not for a second. Do I wish things had been different? Of course, I wish my son had grown into a man of integrity, I wish he'd valued our relationship more than my bank account. I wish a lot of things. Do I miss him? That's the hardest question. I miss who I thought he was. I miss the little boy who used to climb into my lap for bedtime stories. I miss the teenager who came to me with his problems. I miss the young man who called me his hero. But that person either never really existed or he died somewhere along the way, replaced by someone I don't recognize. I filled my life with other things now. I joined a book club and made new friends. I started taking painting classes on Tuesday evenings. I traveled to Santa Fe with my friend Helen and spent a week exploring art galleries and eating amazing food. I wake up each morning without the weight of worry about what Brandon might ask for next, what crisis he might manufacture, what manipulation he might attempt. I'm free, for the first time in 37 years, since the moment Brandon was born and I became responsible for another human being. I'm truly free. And it feels like I can finally breathe. I won't lie and say it doesn't hurt. There are moments when I see a mother and son together, laughing at a restaurant or shopping at the grocery store, and I feel a pang of loss so sharp it takes my breath away. There are nights when I lie awake and wonder what Brandon is doing, if he's okay, if he thinks about me. But then I remember the look on his face as he watched me at that dinner table waiting for the drugs to kick in. I remember the calculation in his eyes, the lack of remorse until he got caught. And I know I made the right choice. A mother's love is supposed to be unconditional, they say. But I've learned that unconditional love doesn't mean unconditional tolerance of abuse. I can love my son and still refuse to let him destroy me. I can hope for his well-being while maintaining boundaries that protect my own. I can grieve the relationship we lost while celebrating the freedom I gained. They say blood is thicker than water, but I learned something important that night at the dinner table. Respect is thicker than blood. Integrity is thicker than blood. Self-preservation is thicker than blood. My son tried to humiliate me for financial gain. He tried to use my love for him as a tool to manipulate me. He drugged me and planned to watch me suffer, all so he could justify asking for more money. I refused to be his victim. I took back my power. I protected myself. And I've never looked back. Some people think that makes me a bad mother. Maybe they're right. Maybe a good mother would have forgiven immediately, would have helped Brandon and Stephanie, despite what they did, would have put family above personal dignity. But I've spent my entire adult life being what everyone else needed me to be. Strong for Brandon after his father died, supportive through his education, generous with my money, always giving, always sacrificing, always putting his needs first. For once I put myself first. And if that makes me a bad mother, then so be it. At least I'm a mother who knows her worth. At least I'm a woman who refused to let the person she loved most in the world treat her like garbage. At least I'm someone who understands that love without respect is just exploitation wearing a mask. I don't know if Brandon has learned anything from this experience. I don't know if losing the house taught him about consequences or just made him more bitter. I don't know if he takes responsibility for his actions or if he's convinced himself I'm the villain in this story. Honestly, it doesn't matter anymore. His growth, his choices, his life, those are his responsibility now, not mine. I did my job, I raised him, I loved him, I gave him every advantage I could. What he does with the rest of his life is up to him. I can't control it, I can't fix it, and I won't sacrifice myself trying to save him from himself anymore. So where do you stand on this? Was I too harsh? Should a mother forgive anything, even being drugged by her own child? Or do you think I did the right thing by protecting myself and teaching him about consequences? Drop a comment below and let me know your thoughts. And if this story resonated with you, if you've ever had to make the painful choice between family loyalty and self-respect, hit that like button. Subscribe to hear more stories about real people facing impossible choices. Share this with someone who needs to hear that it's okay to set boundaries even with the people you love most. Thank you for listening to my story. I know it wasn't easy to hear. It certainly wasn't easy to live through. But I wanted to share it because I think there are a lot of people out there who are being taken advantage of by family members, who feel guilty for even thinking about protecting themselves, who believe that love means accepting any treatment no matter how cruel. I'm here to tell you that's not true. You can love someone and still say no. You can be a good parent, a good child, a good person, and still refuse to be abused. You deserve respect, you deserve dignity, you deserve to be treated with kindness, especially by the people who claim to love you. I hope my story helps someone out there find the courage to stand up for themselves. I hope it reminds you that your worth isn't measured by how much you give or how much you sacrifice. Your worth is inherent, unchangeable, and precious. Don't let anyone, not even family, convince you otherwise. Take care of yourselves out there. Set your boundaries. Protect your peace. And remember, sometimes the most loving thing you can do for yourself and for others is to let them experience the consequences of their own choices. Until next time.